now listening to the Arsenal Therapy Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the 15-minute show, part of the Arsenal Therapy Podcast. What needs to change to bring Arsenal's left side up to speed? It's slow, it's stale, it's stagnant. Gabriel Martinelli's getting a lot of the blame, but there's a lot more to it than just Gabby. Today, we're going to look into what's gone wrong, how Arsenal fix it, and what we need to do to really bring things up to speed ahead of the new season. The easy solution is to point purely at the market. We all want Eberechi Eze for multiple reasons. Is he the right solution? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you that he is one way or another, but I'm going to look at internal solutions that we've got, what's gone wrong, how we fix them, how we make sure that we are getting more out of that side, because right now Arsenal are relying purely on the brilliance of Bukayo Saka, and a huge amount of pressure is being put on Martin Odegaard to create that central threat. And anytime it doesn't go to plan, Ødegaard is scapegoated. He is someone who's under huge pressure, but a lot of the creative burden is being carried on his shoulders and those of Bukayo Saka's. We've got Ben White back, who's offering real overlapping threat on the right-hand side. But what about the left? What needs to change? A huge amount of criticism came after Arsenal's loss to Tottenham in Asia. However, let's have a look at it. So first up, this is a clip of Martinelli approaching the box. Left wing, where is he? He's coming in, facing up to his man 1v1, and look at the number of Tottenham players in the box. This is a common theme with Arsenal. We face low blocks time and time and time again. Pre-season, 0-0, Tottenham have every player in the box. We saw it in the second half. Tottenham flooded the box, threw bodies in front of the ball, and made sure their tactic was blocking shots, staying compact, and trying to spring us on the counter. That's a tactic that works very well against Arsenal. A lot of teams have got success out of it. However, one thing that we have to say is we have to be careful not to overemphasize this, because we do break down low blocks. What we need to find a solution to is the games where we can't quite get past that stubborn defense. A big part of this, and this sounds like such a daft point, but you score early, you don't let that defense get settled. The longer a game goes on, the more rigid a defense becomes, the more routine defending becomes, and the more settled they become. The more those blocks, those headers, those clearances just become routine. Now, for Arsenal, the key will be scoring earlier, making sure we have faster starts. But this kind of scene is the norm. We've been seeing it for the last few years. It's been something that every team faces. All the big boys face this situation, and we are facing it pretty much from everyone outside the top four. Man City have struggled many a time to break these down, but ultimately Arsenal need more threat right across the pitch. Saka's brilliance is the current threat and the solution to breaking these down. But currently, we don't have the firepower options on the left that we do on the right. And we need to make sure that we're platforming that left-hand side more. So let's have a look at some of the things. First up, Gabriel Martinelli. He's a player that's much maligned by the Arsenal support right now. And I wanted to start by looking at his heat map. Look where Gabby's heat map is most congested. It's right out at the touchline. It's before you get to the box. It's at the very, very edge of the final third. This is where you're seeing him most on the ball. And as you get closer to that penalty spot, he is getting less and less and less involved. That in itself is a big problem, because what we know about Gabriel Martinelli is he's a very instinctive player. He relies on his one-touch finishing, getting the cross away first time, and that's something we're not seeing enough of right now. What we're seeing from Gabby is him getting the ball, head down, and running down a dark alley. As a result, whenever he gets into a danger area, quite often, he's got the ball tangled in his feet. He's on his left foot. He's not in a position to push the ball forward because he set himself up for failure. And it means defenders are able to get in behind him. But if you look at Gabby's brilliance, the goal at the Bernabeu, for example, a lot of that is whenever he get the ball out of his feet early. And we saw last season on numerous occasions, in transition, he didn't get the ball out of his feet early. His running wasn't direct, and he wasn't fully confident. He's a player that you can tell by how he sets himself what his finish is going to be like. And I'm going to use a couple of examples here. I mentioned the Bernabeu, brilliant finish. You just knew when he was running through, shoulders up, nice lean to one side, opens his body. You knew that was going in the bottom corner. Everyone did. However, PSG away, or PSG at the Emirates, you knew because he was leaning far too far to one side that he was not going to get that corner. He's not going to generate the pace. And as a result, he wasn't able to bend that ball around Donnarumma. And he also gave himself only one option, which was going to cross him. Another example is when he went clean through against Newcastle in the first leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final, and he hit the post. That was central running, very counter-attacking, very much old school bread and butter for Martinelli. And he smashed the ball and he hit the post. Again, he never looked set and he never looked like he was going to score. But again, his touch map, look at how many touches are coming right out on the flank, right out on the, literally on the touchline, and look at where they're coming. And then look at how many are coming close to the box and how many inside it. Quite simply, there are not enough touches in and around the danger area. And as a result, we're seeing him in a position where he's not able to impact the game. People will say Martinelli's used as a touchline winger. One thing I would ask you, why is Trossard allowed to roam in field? Trossard often starts right on the touchline where you see Martinelli's touches most heavily congested, but then he moves in field. Martinelli used to do that, and then as his confidence dipped and he almost started to regress, that's when he started hugging the touchline more and more. It's almost like that safety blanket that he's got, that he's used to playing out there. His touch is good, his work rate's very good, but he's not taking the same risks that he used to. And that was what set Martinelli apart as a player. And then you look at his chances created. These numbers are relatively healthy in terms of chances created. 38 chances, 3 assists, but look where they're coming. Again, it's when he gets close to the box. When Gabriel Martinelli gets close to the box, he can make things happen. He can make a game come to life. And he can really get the ball off either foot and put it into a very, very dangerous position with quite a lot of accuracy. And that can open a game up. The issue, and I'm going back to why he's not doing it enough, because clearly he's allowed to roam in field to create these chances, but why is he insistent on running down these blind alleys? That's the issue that he's got. Trossard is much more content popping it off to a teammate, moving somewhere, allowing someone to go around him and creating that space and thinking with that kind of street smartness and that kind of football intelligence that sometimes I don't think Martinelli has on a pitch. But one of the games I really wanted to highlight was Fulham last season. Martinelli was unplayable this game. It was one of his best games that I've seen for a long time, and he was just absolutely immense. He created 5 chances, he had 12 touches in the box, 9 crosses, 25 sprints, and 3 shots. So you look at all of those, what stands out is the impact. It's where are the things happening inside the box, touches inside the box. And here's a couple of examples from that game. Martinelli gets the ball. You can see this. Marino goes on the outside. Martinelli starts to go central. So this is what I was referring to, those touches. And this is why I push back on the fact that Martinelli is simply asked to be a touchline winger. Look at when he gets the ball here. His run is infield. Marino goes out the outside of him. And Kai Havertz does this. Viktor Gyokeres does this. So again, we're going to look into more of this and what Gyokeres is going to offer and tie this stuff together. Martinelli plays the ball round to Marino and he's able to continue his run. And this is the replay for Saka's goal. Marino puts the cross in. Martinelli flicks it over the top and Saka scores. So what you've got here is a player that's willing to go into that half space, willing to cause problems in the box. And that's what we've seen with Martinelli when he's at his absolute best. And again, another example of Martinelli, you can see where he runs. He goes from outside, he's the furthest man wide, and he makes that run and he goes diagonal straight into the box. Ødegaard plays it in. He's just marginally offside. But this was a brilliant piece of play from both Ødegaard and Martinelli. And it showed when Ødegaard's got a runner to aim for, he can pick that pass. Too often we see players wanting the ball to feet. Bukayo Saka, for all his brilliance, is a player who wants the ball to feet. So people criticize Ødegaard for playing that pass outside, popping it off to him with Saka getting right to his feet. Saka's not a player who runs on, but Martinelli is that player. And if he's making more of those runs and he's not being picked up, then it's a different problem. Then that's something that Arsenal need to address. But when I talk about Martinelli's central threat, this was the other night against Spurs. Ball came in. You can see Martinelli on the right-hand side. Kai Havertz gets the ball and he literally, lovely flick, straight in. You can see the second chance. Martinelli with 4 players around him, gets the ball, carries it in, and he kind of toe pokes it at the keeper. Really good shot, good save. And it's an example of what Martinelli can do in these areas. And that's something that we want to see more of, because with our wingers on the left-hand side, we can create real problems. But I want to go back a couple of years now and look at Trossard's goal against Porto. So on this occasion, this was Martin Odegaard going into that left half space. And this is something that I don't think he does enough, where Ødegaard comes in and plays that pass, allows attackers to get into that, in beyond, into the box. And we saw on this occasion, ball comes in, Ødegaard, lovely pass, unpicks the defense, and it was Trossard who ran through and slotted the ball home. And again, we've seen Trossard do this stuff loads. But a big part of this is movement, creating space for runners. Now, one of the problems is Declan Rice isn't that lock picker on the left-hand side. So how do Arsenal solve that? Well, a big part of allowing Martin Odegaard to really roam is using Declan Rice as more of a true box-to-box midfielder, rather than having being a high eight who's having to receive between the lines with his back to goal and turn and play. Rice can be very effective there, but if you look at his best games, he's almost playing in almost a double pivot, where he's getting the ball or getting himself back to do a lot of defensive work, but really using those big, powerful carries and getting up and down the pitch like we saw against Real Madrid. As a true eight, where he is literally pinned up at top of the box, it doesn't quite bring the same effect. He becomes more of a shooter, and that's something that we have seen added to his game. He's a very, very good shot taker from the edge of the box, and we will see more of it. But with Martinelli, a lot of his kind of early stuff is attributed to Granit Xhaka. But we do know, this is an example, a couple of years ago when Xhaka was still at the club, and you can see ball middle of the park, and you can see Martinelli isolated as he is now. This has not changed. This is the same thing we saw before. Martinelli gets the ball from Trossard. Granit Xhaka's in the middle. Then Xhaka makes the decoy run, and it leads to Arsenal going 1-0 up. But here's an example of Declan Rice doing something very, very similar. So Rice, again, very high up, gets the ball. Martinelli plays him in behind. Rice pulls it back, and it's Ødegaard following in who gets the ball, puts it in the back of the net. So my point with this stuff and why I'm comparing this, people say that Granit Xhaka leaving was a big factor in Martinelli's form. It's also important to remember that he had numerous injuries after Xhaka left. That second season, after his 15 non-penalty goal season, Martinelli had numerous injuries. One really bad cut to the foot against Sheffield United. I was at that game. It happened right in front of me, and I can say you could hear it on the pitch. There was such a loud contact. But those injuries continued into last season, and Martinelli feels like he's at a bit of a stop-start. Ultimately, he's a player that's probably playing close to his ceiling anyway, because he is a very head-down player who doesn't make great decisions all the time and is very, very instinctive. He relies on his physical assets as much as anything, and it is very much off-the-cuff football. But with Arsenal right now, to break these low blocks down, we really need players making better decisions in those areas. But I said I would bring Viktor Gyokeres into this. And Gyokeres is a player, if you look at his heat map, where does he like to play? He likes to play at the edge, inside the box predominantly, but it's on the left side. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because some of Gabriel Martinelli's best football was played with Gabriel Jesus on the left-hand side, and he operated in this area too. He played slightly deeper. He liked to go wide, and Gyokeres is a player who will go wide. And I've got an example here of Gyokeres on the left channel. So this is high up the park. You can see him running into that space. Ball goes over the top. He gets it, and he starts charging in. And again, this is something that we haven't seen enough from Arsenal, is these runs in behind. Straight away, you can see it comes to the final third. Gyokeres is straight in. He's not waiting for the ball to be passed around 3 or 4 more times. He's pulling defenders. And at which point, if he's making a run like this, that will create space for someone else. And Arsenal are a much better team than Sporting. We talk about, in this game, Sporting are 7-0 up at this point. The irony is not lost on me how weak some of these opposition teams are. And he is like a bull. He just rummages his way through and gets past defenders. But Arsenal are a much, much better team than Sporting. He will get better service at Arsenal. And if he can adapt to this league, he will really thrive in these areas and allow Arsenal to pull defenders. Because whilst I'm critical of Martinelli and some of his decision making, I do think there's a static nature about Arsenal's play that really doesn't aid Martinelli at all. Runners will help movement. I've just highlighted Xhaka's movement, Declan Rice's movement, and how Martinelli has responded to that. Again, Martinelli's a player that I mentioned at the start that's very instinctive. Gyokeres coming in, going wide here, would allow Martinelli to go in central. And again, that creates space for players. Whenever you have one that pulls another out, Martinelli going in the underlap, pulls that ball back, suddenly he's getting the ball and putting it in the back of the net. And with Martinelli, I think that key is how he interacts with his teammates, because ultimately he has to get his head up, think more smart, and just be able to pop it off at times rather than running down a blind alley. And with Gyokeres as well, you can see where he likes to shoot. He likes the ball inside the box. He loves cutbacks. It wasn't a strategy that Sporting really went by, but Gyokeres has been kind of pinpointed as that transitional player. But actually, he loves getting the ball in the box. And if Martinelli can get in closer to those spaces that I showed you where he was creating the chances from, rather than being a complete touchline winger, he will be able to create chances for Gyokeres, because Gyokeres will run. Again, I keep mentioning this because right now Arsenal are too static. Kai Havertz is a brilliant player and he moves players all around, but he predominantly does that on the right-hand side. And Arsenal's right-hand side is already unbelievably strong. The presence of Viktor Gyokeres will allow Arsenal to do more on the left. It will give us more runners on that side, more movement. And with that, we need to get Martin Odegaard onto that side as well and allow him to roam more, because the more static we make him, the more difficult it will become for Arsenal to create chances for these players. And again, Gyokeres is a player that really likes to carry the ball. I mentioned his transitional nature, and I'm going to talk about why that I've included these graphs and why I'm talking about transitions so much when one of the problems we have is low blocks. So look at Gyokeres' carries. He's doing it on both sides, but he is more heavily biased towards the left. Again, every time he's carrying, that gives Martinelli an option to go on the overlap or the underlap. And if you've got two players with the pace of Gyokeres and Martinelli running at you, you're not going to like it. I don't care how good of a defender you are. This is going to cause problems. And this is an example of Gyokeres doing that on the left-hand side. So this is against Sturm Graz in the Champions League. You can see it. Ball comes down, and he is just straight on his bike. Once the ball, and you will see this a lot this season, how he rolls defenders. He did it to Saliba, and people will say he'll not get away with that in the Prem. Defenders will lock him up. I think some people over-index how strong Premier League defenders are, especially when they're playing against teams like Arsenal. So again, Gyokeres straight down the line, gets that ball, and he's in behind. And again, look how isolated he is. This is a one-man attack doing this. Imagine someone doing this in the Arsenal team when you suddenly got floods of players coming up with you. This will make a huge difference to our left-hand side, because right now we don't have this. The only player who would make that run is Martinelli, and he's a player that right now is out of form, and I don't think he would be able to turn, spin, and get in behind the way he once would have. But these carries are something that Gyokeres wants to do time and time again, and he will continue to do them relentlessly, whether it's the first minute of the game or the last minute. This is a guy that doesn't give up. He's got that mentality that's just pure brute force, but he can also keep going and going and going at a ridiculous rate right until the end of the game. And on top of that, we're adding Noni Madueke. So I've added him for the left-hand side for a reason. Firstly, I don't believe that Arsenal have spent around £50 million on a player just to be a backup. I also don't think you buy an England international just to be a backup and convince him to leave Chelsea, where he was a starter, to go and join Arsenal as a backup. So Chelsea are in the Champions League, have just won the Club World Cup, are in a very good position. I do not think that Madueke is coming to Arsenal unless he believes he's coming in to start games. So let's have a look at some of his numbers. So predominantly he has been used on the right-hand side. 26 starts there, 7 on the left. But one thing I would highlight is whilst he has got significantly better numbers on the right, not great numbers on the left, some of his big games came on the left-hand side, such as Liverpool last season, where he had a tremendous game. and 1.37 chances per 90 created as a left winger where he hasn't been used. I expect an almost Rafinha-like Leroy Sané type approach if Madueke plays on the left. And the reason I include him here is he's only 22, 23, but one thing he's very good at is opening his body and getting past people quickly. And what he gives Arsenal is an option of a left footer on the left wing. Those cutbacks and a player who wants to go beyond rather than cut inside onto the right foot will make defenses think differently. Madueke is also more than comfortable starting right out on the touchline in the way that Martinelli maybe isn't. He's a fantastic carrier, as his numbers show. And he's someone you can see here has played all over the park. He's played minutes, literally left wing, right wing. He has played them. He's been involved in the center. But this is a guy that's very active as an attacker, can play right across the front line. And here's an example of Madueke. This is from the right, but this stuff can be translated onto the left. It's because it's the directness that I'm looking at. Gets the ball, running down the flank, turns onto his weaker right foot, and he goes around the man. And the reason I say this can be translated is because he's gone round the man onto his weaker foot. There is absolutely no doubt a player like that can go round a man and onto their stronger foot and cut it back. On this occasion, he's cutting that ball back into the path of Cole Palmer and getting it across goal, putting it in a really dangerous area. And that's something that can really benefit Arsenal. But what about beyond these players? What about what Arsenal have already? Who else should be linking up? What impacts the final third? Now, I mentioned the window. As is the name being linked, whilst I fully appreciate there will be backlash for this, I would have prioritized an overlapping left back this season, and I would have probably managed Lewis-Skelly's minutes in amongst that. Probably played him a bit in midfield as well. But Lewis-Skelly has signed a 5-year deal, and Arsenal do not look like they're going to add a left back. Part of the reason I would have done that is because of Calafiori's fitness. I've chosen not to really focus on Calafiori in this because I don't know how often he's going to be fit. But one thing I would say is if Calafiori can get himself fit, he's an agitator. He's someone that creates chaos, whether he's playing as a left centre back, a left back, or even further up the park. He will create chances. We saw when he came on against PSG, he created chances and he created havoc. But with Arsenal on the left-hand side, this is an example of one of the things that does make it difficult for our left in particular. Look at Lewis-Skelly's position here. This is something that we will see time and time again, and we'll see Zubimendi in the place of Thomas Partey. Myles gets the ball, and this is against Real Madrid. Look how tucked in he is. It's created a double pivot, and you can see Arsenal with that 3-2-2, and essentially going into the kind of 2-3-5 going forward as we progress the ball up the pitch. But where Myles wants to receive is very central, and he wants to carry in that position. And you can see that the Real Madrid game was no different. On this is against PSG. Gets the ball, exactly the same position. So against Madrid, it's Saliba on the ball, carrying it out, and it's Myles looking for the ball. Against PSG, straight in from David Raya, gets the ball, absolutely spins his man. I think it's Hakimi who gets it, and Myles straight through the middle. And what you can see here is Martinelli making that out-to-in run. So he started right out on the touchline. You can see him in the far corner where he is, right beside the Lays sign. Martinelli is right on the touchline. Lewis-Skelly gets the ball. He just drives through the middle of the park. One of the advantages of having Myles in this position is he's an extremely strong, powerful ball carrier. And when he gets going, he's very difficult to stop. He's also very good with his final ball. So you look at this, and he shrugged off multiple players. He's got quite a bit of space between him and his man, plays that ball in. And I mentioned Martinelli, when he's off balance and when he hasn't fully set himself, you can tell that he's not going to score. This was a prime example of that. And Martinelli needs to tighten up in these situations. We do see him get chances and we do see him create, but he needs to be more consistent with that. And this was an example of what Myles can do in that position. But I do also want to see Myles going round him more. We know he's got a great end product. So I want to see him cutting the ball back. He doesn't need to be a crosser in a kind of Patrice Evra form or a Marcelo, but he can be a player that's cutting the ball back and just adding more in the final third and allowing Martinelli, Trossard, or whoever's there to really thrive off someone going around them and to make that pitch bigger. Because whilst games like this, we can really play, most games we are facing a low block. So having that player that goes wide rather than always going central will aid us in that. And I do hope that with Gyokeres pulling defenders and Havertz pulling defenders, Arsenal will have more movement in the final third, because it is important to remember during the run-in last season, we were playing with Mikel Merino, who's a pure ball-to-feet player, as a false nine, with Ethan Nwaneri at times on the right, Leandro Trossard on the left. We didn't have our key movers in the team. And whilst it looks a bit stale now, it's important to remember our rhythm's not there yet. We're training in the morning and then playing games. So this stuff should iron out. It should improve. But why did I mention transitions so much? So look at our defensive tactics. Only 4 teams spent more time in a low block when defending than Arsenal last season. And you look at those teams, it was West Ham, Ipswich, Southampton, and Brentford. A big part of that was because we went down to 10 men a lot of times, so we did drop into a low block. However, we didn't have big, powerful transitional runners to get us out whenever we were in those blocks. So you look at games like the Bournemouth game, the City game. Arsenal kept Martinelli on instead of Xhaka in the City game. And a big reason for that was because of his running power, his outball, and his work ethic. He can be trusted to defend. But ultimately, Arsenal had no attacking threat in those games except Martinelli. So with Gyokeres, with Madueke, Arsenal have threat that can be used on transition from the left-hand side or the right-hand side. But the left is probably where our strongest transitional runners are. And when we get the ball, David Raya is an exceptional keeper at claiming the ball and releasing it very fast, very flat, and very, very accurate, throwing or kicking. Arsenal need to utilize the newfound players in Madueke and Gyokeres, and ultimately really make use of Martinelli's running. And a big part of this will be Martinelli getting out of his own head and starting to be more efficient. I am hoping that competition for places really eases that. But alongside that, we need to see Martin Odegaard drifting centrally more, Ethan Nwaneri drifting centrally, and allowing the likes of Martin Zubimendi to get those passes sprung forward. Zubimendi's an incredible player, just going straight over the top very quickly. He'll fire balls through the center of the park, and he will be someone who ultimately can really get the best out of these players. Because right now, we've got plenty of firepower. We could do with one more. That's the dream. That's the hope. But if you look at the solutions that we've got right now at this moment, we have more than enough firepower to break down low blocks. The question is, do we have enough firepower to do it consistently over the course of the season? But ultimately, the key to getting down that left-hand side is making sure we're starting that ball moving early, being more progressive at the base, and making sure that we have movement. Declan Rice moving out and allowing Martinelli to go in. Rice coming deep and getting the ball, and again allowing Ødegaard to move into the centre. All of this movement will make our left-hand side better. And without it, we are going to stay still. We're going to stay stagnant. And teams will be able to line up and just head away crosses for us, because this is the key. But look, tell us what you think in the comments. If you've enjoyed the show, please drop a like. Please subscribe to the channel. But as I said, please drop a comment and tell us what you think. Is Martinelli going to be able to get out of his head this season? Do you see Madueke coming in as a starter on that left-hand side? And how do you see Viktor Gyokeres impacting the left-hand side of the pitch? Give us all your thoughts. That's what we're here for. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Have a great day. We'll see you again very soon.